Okay. So I'll take questions now, maybe for just a few minutes, just one or two questions, and then we'll go to the next kind of phase, which is socializing and stuff. I'll go with yourself first, and then yourself. Do you want to? Yeah.
I'm just interested in obviously it's different for every school, but when you're not being funded by the state and you have a sliding scale, do the staff or whatever you're called, do they get some sort of wage, or how does that sort of thing work in the particular school you're in now?
Money, money, money. Yeah. The thing is, the reason why I didn't mention money is because it comes out of the group. You know, you have to make decisions based on who you're working with and who you are, right? So we came up with our proportional fee system over about 2 months. It took us 2 months of conversations and spreadsheets, and eventually we came up with this proportional fee-based system based on the gross household income with the minimum of 2,400 and the maximum of 12 grand. That came out of conversations we had. What also came out of conversations we had was that in order for us to have a kind of financial breathing space for the first year, was that all the staff, it was something that I got from a school that they did in France as well, was that all the staff wouldn't take a wage for the first year. We all made that decision. Because most of the money for schools goes into staff wages. That's where most of the money goes. Like 2/3 to 3/4 of your money will go into staff wages. So if you take a year out, I don't work. I don't do billable work, put it that way. I volunteer all my time. So we've decided to do that we did that for this year. And in September, we're currently in the process of sorting out like who's going to get paid and who's not. Is everybody going to get paid equally, blah, blah, blah. And that's conversations that we'll have as a group as well. So, yeah, like ideally, I'd love to have a person who, like a philanthropist who gives money, and we have a bursary for students from low socioeconomic areas. Yeah, it's something that we'll probably have someday, something that I certainly want to bring in, but unfortunately 2,400 was like the minimum we could really, that we collectively decided on, put it that way. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, well, it's just that thing of visioning how it could actually work, the logistics, and obviously paying for a space and possibly people to help run it is a huge part of that.
Yeah. But also, like, you can make decisions like we open 8:30 to 5 Monday to Friday. You could decide to open 3 days a week from 9 till 3. You know, you could decide to only open evenings. Like, all this is up for deciding, because what's interesting is that they do not set out in any of the legislation how many days you even have to be open. Like, it's truly liberating, like the Irish legislation. We decided to go with something that looked like the traditional one, you know, because we thought, you know, well, if people have kids in traditional, they might have one child in this school, it might suit them better in terms of holidays and all that kind of jazz, you know. So, yeah. Is that okay?
Yeah. Is this for like national schools, primary schools? Because I'd be curious how that sort of education system works with the CAO and how students would be expected to get into college in that route. Or would you know even?
Yeah. So under Irish legislation, state exams are not mandatory. Yeah. You don't have to do them. Everybody thinks you do. You don't. And it's a travesty, because people doing the Leaving Cert and feeling pressure to do the Leaving Cert has real impact on people's mental health at a very vulnerable time in their lives. And it's completely needless anyway, because if you want to go to college, it says on the CAO, level 5 or equivalent. That equivalent means FETAC courses as well. So you don't even need a Leaving Cert to get into college for most courses. Like, if medicine and stuff like that, fair enough. you know, you have to do the HPAT or whatever, but you don't need to do Leaving Cert. In terms of primary schools and secondary schools, alternative schools can be primary or secondary or both. Ours is both. Our age group is 5 to 18. And actually I'm thinking about bringing in a school law that says you leave when you're ready to leave. So you're not saying like, oh, you're 18 now, out the door now. You leave when you decide, you know, I've got what I need out of this school and I'm ready to move on now, which feels a lot better to me. Because like what age, you know? Like, you know, you're as mature as you are. It's not about what age you are. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Yes?
Mariam is my name. I found the presentation very interesting, and when I saw the event, somehow I just got excited. And as a former primary school teacher from my home country in South Africa before coming to Ireland, and in Ireland I've worked in a childcare setting as well. So I do understand when we talk about state schools, for example, I did see a lot of limitations. And then when I came to Ireland, I did community work, youth work, and then I imagine that if I were to go back to teaching in South Africa, I think I would be an excellent teacher coming from a social justice kind of a perspective. So when you say visiting schools, are you talking about similar kind of schools, or are you talking about any schools to learn what not to do or what to do?
That's a really good point, learning what not to do. I have a friend, Baz, and he gives a presentation at the UDEC conference every year on how not to set up democratic schools. And it's really well attended. A lot of it has to do with the vision. And going and visiting other schools helps you solidify that vision. Because there's nothing worse than just starting a school and not knowing what you're actually doing, like, you know. I'm not sure you'll even get to that point, to be honest, like, because people won't trust you. I don't even know, like, it's just, you need to know what you're doing. And you have to, and like, if I'm involved, I'd like to think that I've every alternative school in Ireland that I know of, I think I know of all of them now, and I've met the groups, and I think they're on the right track. So I'm hoping that there's no alternative schools just going to open and not have good, solid visions, you know, because we need to help each other, you know, in that regard. Right.
How many alternative schools are in Ireland at the moment?
I think there was well, it depends what you mean by alternative. Actually, there's one down in Kerry, of course. That's it, as far as I know. There was a Steiner school in like West Clare, and then it was like having problems with funding, and so then it said, oh, we'll turn into a state school, we'll meet those 12 criteria, and it killed it.
You're talking secondary schools, are you? Or just
Secondary.
oh, yeah.
So, yeah, cool. So, I think, is there any more questions? Oh yeah, okay.
Is the school primarily skills based or is it content based by the kids' input?
Cool. Right. I don't know where to begin with this one. Did you see this? We were handing out a sheet at the beginning, and it's got learning in /sex. And do you know what we'll do is I'll put it at the door, and people can take it on their way out. And it tries to address the concept of like unschooling, and unschooling and the Sudbury model are very similar. It's a very similar philosophy. And I'll just read out one from this sheet. And it says, to understand how unschoolers view education, simply take these common and widely held beliefs about sex and replace the word sex with the word learning. Okay? So the desire for learning is a powerful human drive which expresses itself naturally at the developmentally appropriate time. it's important that young people are able to begin learning when they feel ready and not when someone else pressures them to begin. And that's kind of, there's about 9 other ones here, and that's kind of what we're all about in Sudbury. Is that we actually don't teach, right? Teach reading or writing. The first Sudbury school was set up in 1968. They've never had a child come out of it illiterate. Every child knows how to read and write. And you see videos of it and the kids are like, I know how to read and write, and nobody taught me how to read and write. I just know. And the reason is because of evolution. It's because we're biological machines, right? And kids are like fledgling humans, right? And they're pre-programmed to basically assimilate all the knowledge they need to become effective adult versions of themselves. So if you grow up in a culture saturated by literacy, where literacy is used all the time and it's a tool of the culture, they'll naturally pick it up. That's the idea. So there you go. So it's skills based. It's about, the purpose of Sudbury Schools is to create an environment in which young human beings can flourish. And what's interesting about that is the focus on the environment. One of the kind of like, it is a paradigm shift, no doubt. Like, you have to engage in this process, you have to read, you have to watch videos, you have to deprogram yourself from the culture you've grown up in, how you've been taught. This stuff goes deep. You know, you've been 14, maybe 2 decades in this system where people have been giving you knowledge the whole time, and you're like, okay, this is how I learn, you know. And it's like, what we're trying to do is set up a school which is the exact opposite, which is like, oh, what do I want? What do I want to do? Okay, well, we give the kids the time and space to sit in that space. They figure out, oh, I think I might want to learn guitar. Oh, I think I might want to learn Japanese. I think I might want to do art right now. Actually, I'm hungry, you know. So that's what we do, is we focus on the environment, not the teaching. We create a space characterized by freedom and safety. So the kids feel safe because you can't be free unless you feel safe. So you feel safe to just explore whatever you want to explore. And we don't focus on the pedagogy, trying to teach the kids and hit those developmental milestones at what science and the institutions say are the developmentally appropriate times. So you have kids in Sudbury schools who learn to read and write at 5, and you've got kids who learn to read and write at 13. And what's very interesting, actually, and I'll end on this one, is a lot of this is really counterintuitive, right? It's a real paradigm shift. And one of the things they've noticed in the 40, 50 years that the first Sudbury school has been opened is that the kids who learn to read and write at age 13 tend to go into more academics and theoretical stuff, which is kind of not what you think, really. You think they're the kind of slow ones, you know, who are a bit delayed and aren't as smart. Oh, Jesus, I have to really emphasize these. Smart as the other ones, you know. But actually, that's not the case at all. The 13-year-olds who learn to read and write, then, when they're ready, get really deep into stuff, theoretical, academic stuff, and tend to go on and do really heavy-duty stuff, like being directors. I think one of the Sudbury School alumni was the director of the Snowden documentary. I mean, if you're doing a documentary on Snowden, you have to be pretty smart, you know, you have to know your stuff, you know. So, yeah, I think I'll leave it there. But what we'll do now, I think, if people are okay with it. Oh, sorry, yeah, question.
There's still learning other skills about children with special educational needs.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, what is special educational needs, first of all? How is that defined, right? Now, you know, I know there's different perspectives on stuff and whatever, but I'm going to say something probably people are not going to agree with, you know. My friend Mark put it like this. He said, kids learn to walk and talk all by themselves, right? Nobody helped them. They just learned to walk and talk. And yet, at the age of 5 or 7, some lucky kids in Finland, we put them into schools and then we think we need to teach them to learn to read and write. But there's no need. Kids don't need that help. They can do it all by themselves. But Mark pointed out that if we did teach kids how to walk and talk, there'd probably be a lot more walking impediments and speech impediments, because they wouldn't have learned to walk and talk when they were ready. So I've got a theory, like, well, basically dyslexia doesn't exist in Sudbury schools. Like, it doesn't,
From being able to handle children who
yeah,
don't even feel comfortable in a comfortable environment. And
yeah,
some people are trained to actually be able to handle that
yeah.
in a learning setting.
That's a really good question. What we do is we just take the child as who they are. Okay? So I can only talk about our school, but I imagine this is how it would work. So we have a student who's there. We've gone through the admissions process. They understand what the school is about, how they're responsible for their own learning. And then we have a 2-week trial period. So the student comes in and just is in the space like any other student. And after 2 weeks, we sit down, and it's the only time that we do actually sit down with the parents. We don't have like annual report, parent-teacher meetings. We don't report to parents. The school is for the children. And so if the parents want to find out what the kids are doing in school, they can ask their kid. Right? And they can tell them if they want to tell them. So after 2 weeks, we sit down and we have the parents and the child. And the purpose of the meeting really is for the child to decide whether they want to stay, and we say like whether it's working. Because it's a relationship. It's the school's relationship with the child and the child's relationship with the school. And in terms of like us kind of knowing whether we're capable of holding the space for the child, we have to talk about that. We have to be really real. Does this work? And the child can say for them, is it working for them? And it's a conversation. And that's how you figure it out, really. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yes.
Hey, so I know you were saying that like in a lot of schools you tend not to have specific like teachers, and it's like kids are kind of doing their own learning at their own pace and stuff. What happens when you say, I guess, when they get to their tween years and they're deciding they really want to go in a specific direction, like they want to be a scientist or whatever. So they're going to have to go towards either maybe BTEC or Leavings in order to get into college before they're student. And they want to be doing some subjects like physics or chemistry and things like that, physical Leavings. And if you don't have a teacher, say, who's experienced in those sort of subjects, because I know myself, like there's certain things I did in college I was like, oh, I can't do this at all. Math, I needed someone to sit down who knew it really well to explain it to me. And what do you do in a situation where you've got a kid who wants to aim for, say, higher level physics and chemistry, and you don't have anyone who's actually really well versed in those subjects to be able to help them along with?
Yeah, good question. So, how do I unpack this? Basically, there's a lot there. There's a lot there. I'm going to try and take little bits of it and deal with it. So, first of all, if a kid knows they want to go into physics, right? They want to do that with their life. Chances are they probably know more than physics than anybody else in the building, right? Like we have a child, Billy, at the moment, and he's a walking, talking dictionary on dinosaurs. It's really inspiring. He actually gave a presentation to the school. It was really, really cool. And like some of the questions that were thrown at him, like, were truly astounding. He didn't need any experts on dinosaurs to teach him. He just taught himself. And that's kind of the idea of the school. If a person does want to, there's different ways you can go about it, right? If a person wants to get Japanese lessons or something, within Sudbury schools, there's what's called a source committee, and there's money set aside for getting specific tutors for them. But they have to argue that. They have to argue that that's valuable. Because, you can't just decide like, oh, I want to do Japanese, and then we're spending time sourcing a Japanese tutor, and then you stop going after 2 lessons or whatever. It's a process.
It's kind of the democratic thing where you can actually sit down together with everyone and discuss like whether something is really well worth it for a
like I mean, and it's a process. It's a process, and also I've heard of other ways of dealing with it as well. Is that usually kids don't really. I mean, kids kind of decide what they want to do. Like in traditional schools, and they don't really know who they are, right? Because you don't know who you are because you've never had the time to get to know who you are. It's 40 minutes of science, 40 minutes of maths, 40 minutes of geography, 20-minute small break, 40-minute big break, you know, where you're decompressing and trying to like get all the activity in because you're going crazy because you're sitting at desks all the time. And what we give kids is space and time. And so when they come to decide like what they might want to do, they kind of know now, like know themselves, you know, and they know what they want to do. And so if they want to do medicine or if they want to go do the Leaving Cert route, which you don't have to do in most cases, you actually can just do a FETAC level course, then they'll just like finish up Sudbury School when they're ready. And then they might go on and they might go to a Grimes institution for a year or something. That's one way of dealing with it. Or if they know themselves and they feel like they can balance their studying for a Leaving Cert while in the Sudbury School, then they can do that. But everything within democratic education always starts with two words. It depends. Everything is it depends. It depends on the student, on the community, on everything. So it's very hard to generalize. Do you know what I mean? But I hear where you're coming from. But these, in my experience, these things are not unsurmountable when you have someone who's decided like this is what I want to do, you know, and they've got the confidence and they're going to do it. Like, you know, they're just going to do it. They'll try. They don't have to spend time in our school all the time. They can actually go and avail of opportunities outside the school, so they can go to the local, down the road, go to some courses. That's all possible within our thing when you have the time and space to decide for yourself. Cool. So I'm going to leave it there. What I do now is I'm going to, are people interested in engaging in icebreakers and chats with the people who are here? What I'll do is I'll take a show of hands all together. Or what we can do is we'll break, and then the people who want to stay can stay, and the people who don't want to can leave, and we can have the chats then, because I imagine there's probably some people here who probably would enjoy chatting with other people who've had similar experiences. I know that like a lot of the time you have parents of kids who have had hard times in school and kind of want to chat to other people about that and stuff. So yeah, cool. I'll leave it there. Thank you very much. Thanks, Harris.